like to go to the participants room, and I'm just going to go with a little roll call. So I want to say good morning to Alex, Ash, BJ, Brad, Carolina Reedy, Dan Conley, Dolores Barajas, Dominic, Edith, Amelia Marie, a bunch of iPhone users, Iris, Jackie Sullivan, Jeanette, Jerry, Joanne, John, Julie, Kelly, Lindsay, Lisa, Maria, Marissa, Max, Michael, Mike, Monica, Nagme, Nicole, Nina, Rebecca, Rick. What's up, Rick? Rita, Ruby. Good morning, Ruby. Sandra, Tim O'Connor, Tracy Sierra, Tristan Hurd. Good morning, everyone. And it's again, as I was saying in the beginning, I'm really privileged to be here and talk with you guys. The last couple of days, we had some really great morning ascents, starting with John and George. And yesterday, after yesterday's morning ascent, I had a appointment with an agent here in my Ventura branch, and it was soon right after morning ascent, and we were talking, and it was our first meeting of the year, and the meeting is pretty much looking through our 2021 action plan, and it was more of an accountability session that we're going to be having on a weekly basis with this agent. But in the opening, he was telling me how yesterday's morning ascent really impacted him on the way he sees and how he handles some of his actions that he does on a daily basis. And really one of them was how we respond to today's challenges. That was a main focal point of what George was speaking about yesterday. And actually, before I go any further, I'll mention this agent. His name is Art. He's a really good Art Perez. He's an awesome agent here in Ventura. So good morning, Art. And anyways, in the discussion, we were talking about that thing about how we choose to respond, and how do we he was giving me a situation where when we have agents that are very emotional agents, and when they take a listing and they're representing their client, they go above and beyond to do the best they can to their ability to represent that client. But sometimes emotions get in the way of the whole thing. And you probably had this experience in your careers where you're dealing with a transaction and you call them with a concern that your client may have, and right away the other agent gets on that offensive. They get on that attack mode, and you kind of are blown back a little bit, and then you wonder why are they reacting like that if we're all on the same purpose of a mutual goal, which is selling the property. Of course, we're representing our clients to the best of our abilities, but at the same time, we are here to broker an agreement together. And Art was saying that, there's a lot of times where agents get on that defensive mode, and before they even listen or try to listen, they react in a way that is very detrimental to the process of the transaction. And in talking with what George was saying yesterday, we came up with this conclusion that when we react as a creature of nature. It's a habit that's instilled in us to react at a moment. But the hard part and the skill set that is required to handle these types of situations, it starts with the mind. And we came up with the conclusion that the mind is actually a buffer to our actual emotional outtakes. And I hope you guys understand. Hopefully you understand what I'm trying to say there. So I walk into my room, my music room. I have a music room at home, and I have a bunch of records on one side from top to bottom. And I have speakers there that are right in front of me. I have a chair that's right in the middle. So I have the opportunity to sit down and relax. I put on a record, and I have stereo sound coming right at me. I walk into my room and I see my daughter who's in there, and she goes to one of the speakers and she poked her finger right in the middle of the woofer. If you don't know how a speaker looks, it's a round circle, and that's where the sound comes out. And in the middle, there's this little, what they call like a monitor, and she pushed it all the way in. She pushed it all the way in when it damaged the speaker. So right away, how do I get? I'm like, OMG. But I laughed. I laughed because I remembered when I was a kid, that same age, I did the same thing to my dad's stereo. It was a hilarious thing. But the reason I bring that story up is that the instant we see something that is threatening us, that we don't agree with, right away we have our natural response. And what we need to understand, what we need to develop, is a strong skill of being able to absorb what is happening around us, process it before we say, something that we may regret, it may hinder our ultimate goal, which is to, in this case, sell transactions. But also this translates into humanity as well, to dealing with each and every one of us. So that's one of the recommendations that we came out with yesterday's meeting. But today I really want to emphasize on that, but I want to talk about fear. I want to talk about assumptions, and I want to talk about failures. And as we start the new year, it's an exciting time. We all feel we have the reset button. We're ready to go. It's a clean slate, right? The sun is rising. We're ready to go. And with regards to fear, I think everyone can relate to the word fear. It's the enemy of success is normally what I like to see it as. It's large rewards only result from taking comparability to large risks, right? If you don't take risks, you don't get rewards. So if you're ruled by fear, you'll never take enough risks and never achieve success you deserve. I've learned in my life, it's that the actions that scared me the most at the time also paid off the most. And a lot of agents that I've been talking with here in my branches, as we've grown together, especially the last couple of years, that's been one of the challenges. A lot of us have fears of doing what we need to do to be successful in our business. We have a hard time seeing us being able to cold call. Just an example, right? But I've seen tremendous growth on the agents that have identified their fear, they've channeled it, and they've targeted it, and they've overcome it. And now they're doing amazing work. And if you joined us on our morning role plays that we do, either with Rick or Ruby or us, Lewis and myself, you'll see the growth that is happening within weeks and weeks as we go through it. So it's the challenging of fear is really important. There's a story I want to share with you guys, and it was one of the biggest fears that I had, and it actually kind of relates to what I'm doing right now. I've had a fear of speaking in front of people earlier in my life. It was, and I think a lot of people relate to this. It's not an easy thing to do. And when I was earlier in my life, like in the high school years, I was really I could express myself in writing way more than I could talking to people. Right, that was just my skill. And as I got through high school, I was asked, you should be on ASB, you should be on the debate team. You're really good at the way you write your stuff or whatever. But I had that fear that I could never talk in front of people in that manner. And not until during that time, I also was really falling in love with music. And music was my pathway through a lot of the things that I've done in my life. And as I got out of school and was getting ready to explore what I wanted to do for a living, music was my everything. I wanted to be in the music business. I wanted to produce records. I wanted to promote records, all that stuff. And I got into radio as an internship. And during that internship, I really realized how these DJs were growing in front of a mic to a public, of talking to hundreds of thousands of people on an FM frequency. And I would sit there and I was like, how could they do that? How could they talk in an empty room and not flinch at anything that is happening? And I just studied that craft. I studied it, but I felt that I couldn't do it. And the reason I was in radio was, again, music. I wanted to promote music. I wanted to, again, I wanted to be a DJ and so forth. And I remember I was, during that internship, I was speaking with the program director. His name is Rooster Rhodes. And I was doing a little, basically a coaching session with him. And I was asking him, what does it take to be successful in this business on talking on radio? And he said, you have to have the gift of gab. Those are the biggest words that were put on my notepad. I remember that. And I didn't know what that meant. And I looked at him and I go, gift of gab. And he says, yes, you have to be able to talk to people. It's as simple as that. When you stand up and you're on that mic, or for example, us being on Zoom, you're not talking to 100,000 people. You're talking to one person. You're always talking to one person. Right now, I'm looking at Dolores Barajas. I am talking to you, even though you're over here busy. I can see you, girl. But I am talking to you. I'm talking to Monica. Good morning. I am talking to you guys because it's awesome that I have this connection with you, no matter if you're 10 miles away or 2,000 miles away. This is awesome. And it's a privilege to communicate. It's one of the gifts that we have in life is to communicate. So going back to the story, uh, Mr. Rhodes, a couple weeks later, he comes and sends me. At that time, we had pagers, so he paged me, and I called, and he says, "Hey, I need you to be on the radio Saturday night. So and so called in sick, and you have to go on." Mind you, I was still an intern, and I said, "Okay, of course I'm going to say yes." And I closed. I hung up, and I had cold sweat, and I was like, "Oh my God, I don't know if I could do this." I just it's one of the biggest fears of my life, and I'm going to be getting on the mic and talking to 100,000 people. So I get there that Saturday night. I got there probably 2 hours early. I was sitting out in the parking lot, just trying to psych myself to get in there. And what am I going to say? What am I going to do? I wrote notes, which you should not do, but I wrote things on what I needed to say because I'm thinking, man, I'm going to stutter, I'm going to falter, and I need these notes to help me get through it. 10 p.m. comes, which is, the late shift, and I opened up that mic. When I opened up that mic, if you guys could see the image of me and just sweating bullets, I had the mic right in front of me, and there was a glass right behind that, and you could see my reflection. But as I opened up the mic and I looked at the reflection, I was looking at the reflection of myself, and I was talking to myself. And that was the moment that I conquered talking in front of people, because it taught me that when you speak to one person all the time. And as long as you connect, as long as you have that connection with that one person, that's the best thing that could happen. And the reason I bring this story up now is because we do this every day. We do this when we cold call. We do this whenever we meet clients in our conference rooms. Obviously with COVID, it's a little different now, but on Zoom, we do it every single day. And if you guys can master and have that skill set of communicating, acknowledging people when you're listening to them, when they're telling you their stories, their problems, their goals. We're taught to reaffirm through the Everest sales system. All of these things are vital to have that ultimate connection of the trust in a relationship that we all thrive to have, that we need in order to be successful in the careers that we have. So that is how I conquered my fear. I ran into it. Why? Because music was on the other end of that spectrum, and I needed to get through that in order to keep on going. And that was my motivation. We have many motivations in our lives, whether it be financially, whether it be to care for our families, whether it be just to serve the community, to provide for a future for our children. These are all motivations that all of us share, to go for a great retirement. So if you see the goal, you identify what it is, but there's these blocks that are getting in the way. Now's the time to really challenge that fear, because at the end of the day, you have nothing to lose. You have nada to lose. What are you going to lose? If anything, you're going to gain that one word that we all strive to have, and that's experience. I think a true definition of experience is failure. If you really think about it, it's failure. That's what it is. So when you talk about fear, I see the value of courage over security. I've read repeated reports or emails or surveys, and they've shown that most people value security over just about everything else in their lives. People will put up with jobs that they hate, marriages that make them miserable, and habits that are killing them. Maybe think of comfort food, and I'm guilty of that one. But it's simply to feel more secure. And to conquer fear, you must continuously dethrone security as the thing that you value most in your life, and replace it with an active virtue of courage, right? You must decide once and for all that it's more important for you to have the courage to do what you must do to succeed rather than to cling to the things that make you feel safe. You guys agree? Show me your hands. I want to make sure you guys, okay, good, good. And then here's the other thing, differentiate the fear with prudence. So most fears are irrational and unreasonable. You know, like for example, you might be afraid to make an important call because it's a call that doesn't go well. You know, you'll have to face the fact if you failed. Or you might be afraid to confront a coworker who acts like a bully, or to start your own business because you're not certain you've got what it takes. These things are irrational fears that hold you back and keep you from being successful. Treat fear as a call to action. That's what I was trying to get at with the story. If what you fear is outside of your control, like for example, the economic downturn, whatever we're going through right now with COVID, write down a specific plan. You know, write whatever you think you need to be doing to prepare, and write down the exact steps that you'll take in order to adapt. And when it happens, once you've completed that task, you have the plan aside and you're ready to go, but you forget about it. You've acknowledged it. You write down what you're going to do, put it in a journal or something, and forget about it. And just, that's your way of getting past that mind block. But if what you fear is inside your control, some action that you're afraid to take a few moments to prepare yourself. Then do that thing that's scaring you the most. I wish I could open up the mics and ask you guys, where do you guys fear the most? Maybe if you guys want to participate in the chat and put some of the things out there that you guys fear. I would love to see you guys share that, because I think all of us will relate to it, and we won't feel alone. We'll see that we're all going through that same process, you know. Refrain fear into excitement. So finally tune into your aspect of fear that's really fun. Really, fear can be fun. Think about the last time you rode on a roller coaster. Mine was, I think, when Disneyland was open, and it was the first time in my life that I went on a roller coaster and I actually felt a little scared. First time. I love roller coasters. The more they go upside down and do 360s, I'm game for it. But I don't know what happens after you turn 45. Things start changing a little bit. And I got off of that roller coaster on a different foot. It was funny. But you probably felt that fear, but you also felt that you were having a great time. And life without fear and without the courage to overcome fear, it would be pretty boring. It really would, you know. On a personal note, I want to add that there was a time in my life when security was so important to me that I was willing to tolerate being totally miserable. You know, I won't bore you with the details, but let's just say that it was only when I changed my thinking that life really came together for me. You know, today I'm actually really excited whenever I discover something that I'm afraid of. It just reminds me that here's one thing that I'm going to add to my repertoire of who I am as a person, because I know that something wonderful is going to happen provided I summon the courage to take that action. You guys with me? Yeah, I know you are. The next one I wanted to talk about was assumptions. And I think we are all guilty of assumptions. It's something that we really take for granted. But how many times in your life do your assumptions turn into wrong? I think I'd be the one to say yes, that's happened to me. Most likely more than a handful of times. You know, it's pretty self-explanatory that doing your best to avoid assumptions in sales is many times an asset as opposed to a detriment. And you know, I'm sure we could all relate to assumptions and how it got us in situations that we look back and it really made us look like fools, or made us feel bad, or we lost relationships, friendships, maybe even jobs. There was one story that I want to share with you guys, and this one is a really strong story, and I will try not to get emotional. I'm not going to do that, but it is a pivotal point in my life. I had just graduated from high school, and again, as I mentioned earlier, I was pursuing a music career, and I I went ahead and I registered for college in Santa Barbara, and I asked my dad if he would take me that summer to the campus to meet with the counselor, and then after that, register for school for the fall semester. So he took me there, and we were there for most of the day, and he was following me around, and I met with the counselors. I got all my courses in order. I paid to be a member of the school, and I was ready to go. I was ready to go, and I felt I was hot to trot. Um, First day of school came. I woke up in the morning, and I had to drive about 45 minutes to get to Santa Barbara. I lived in Santa Paula, and I'm running around. I get my bag, I get everything ready, and then I go to my dad and I go, "Hey, Dad, I need the keys to the car." And my dad looks at me and he says, "Keys to what car?" And I go, "Dad, the van, right?" And he says, "That's my car. You need to figure out how you're going to get to school." And I thought he was joking. I really did think he was joking. And I looked at him for a couple minutes, and he wasn't fidgeting. He was serious. And he got his lunchmate, and he walked out the door and went to work. And I was in complete. I was distraught. It was really hard for me to comprehend how that could happen. He took me to register. He took me knowing where I was going. But on the first day of school, he says, "You're on your own, kid." That was hard. But looking back, it became the probably number one lesson that I've learned in my whole life. And that is to never assume anything. And this number two was that to always figure things out on your own. And mind you, we are a team. I have expressed here, especially in the branches that I manage, that we are a team and we have each other's back. And maybe I'm strong with that because what happened to me when I was at that age, it might have helped me, shaped me, become stronger as a man, as a person. But it also taught me that there are situations that demand someone to have your back, that demand someone to help you when you need it, right? But I assumed at that age that everything was going to be handed to me as far as what I needed to get on my path to succeed. But I was wrong. So that happened, and I ended up not being able to go to school for that semester. I ended up getting a job at Kmart as guy that goes out and gets carts, and I raised for that whole winter or fall into winter. I think I raised around $3,500, and I bought a Mazda B2000 pickup truck for $3,000. And that next semester, I drove to school on my own, and I did it with my own dollar. So that was huge, a big accomplishment. And it's what's even crazier is because of that action, I met my wife at Kmart. She was working there. She was a manager. She was actually my manager. So to this day, she's still my manager, right? But yeah, that action right there changed a lot in my life. And I share this story with you guys because look what happened. I assumed that things were going to be done at what I thought was going to be convenient for me, right? And it didn't happen that way. So the reason I bring up this story and the reason I want to talk about assumption is assume everyone is overwhelmed when you talk to people. There's a flip side to all this stuff, right? There's a negative of assuming what you're experiencing with people, but then also there's a positive when you're assuming. And what I mean by the positive is, again, assume everyone is overwhelmed. Focus on what's relevant, actionable, and valuable to your prospect. And right now I'm rolling into our business aspect here. Minimize complexity by assuming when you're speaking with your clients. Assume your prospects are pretty okay with what they're doing. If they weren't, they would already have changed. Your job is to help them see why it's worth doing things differently, right? There's another way of assuming. Assuming prospects don't like change. Crazy busy people do not want more work, right? Help them envision your solution, helping them envision your solution will get them to their goals and their greater ease. Assume it's your responsibility to be curious. That's a good one. Experiment with creative ways to get people to say, you know what, you're onto something. That's interesting. I'd like to hear more about it. Try to get those type of reactions whenever you're assuming with your clients. Assume prospects want to deal with experts. We all know that, right? Demonstrate familiarity with your prospects, your business processes, your industry, issues and challenges to set yourself apart from your competition. Treat them as they've never been around the real estate industry at all. Even if this is their third or fourth home that they've purchased, it's always good to share and reevaluate the processes, because you are investing in time to make them feel comfortable. And on the flip side, they will see, like, I already know this, but you know what? He's going out of his or her way to make me feel comfortable. And I appreciate that. And I'm talking as a prospect. They will appreciate that, right? With regards to business, we all have a 2021 plan. We all know how many deals we want to do this year. Assume that 50% of those forecasted deals that you want won't close. To exceed your goals, ruthlessly inspect your pipeline to eliminate hope and fix lurking killers. Clear out the duds. Clear out those dud opportunities to make room for real opportunities. Assume technology will fail. When you guys are out there showing property and you're relying on your iPhone or your smart Samsung to open up lockboxes, how many of you have experienced a time where you can't open a lockbox? I know I have. What do? Do you have a plan? Make sure you have a phone number of the agent of the listing that you're showing, just in case that happens. Because the last thing you want to do is be in front of a house with your party behind you and you don't know what to do because you can't open the key to the lockbox. At least show that you know how to handle those situations. Assume that technology will fail, right? Assume buyers won't remember anything. That one, a lot of us can relate to that one. After a phone or in-person conversation, follow up with them. Give them a summary or key points of what you guys spoke about and the next steps. Keep them engaged, but also let them know what we spoke about. Take the burden off of them and let them rely on you. And that result will create that trust, will create that strong bond that a client and a prospect need with their agent in order to continue and have that long-lasting business relationship. So that's what I think about when I think about assumptions, and I hope you guys understand that one. It's dangerous, but it also could be your best friend, right? The last thing I want to talk about is failure, and this failure and fear kind of go hand in hand. You know, people in society tend to view failure as a negative light. You know, most of us, for example, like in schools, I think I had the fear of bringing a report card with a GPA of 3.0 or lower, right? And that has been instilled in us since we were kids. But in reality, failure actually is a good thing. It really shapes us to be who we are now, to be the leaders that we want to be. I remember reading about Thomas Edison, and I think he was asked a question on all the missteps that he had when he was working on his invention of the light bulb. And he said, I've successfully found 10,000 ways, or I made 10,000 attempts, but in reality, I found 10,000 ways that will not work. And now imagine if he would have stopped at 9,999 and not made it to 10,000. We wouldn't have light, right? We'd be talking right now with two cans with a piece of string connected to each other. That's what would be happening. That's Alexander Graham Bell. So yeah, I'm confused with my inventors. But with that being said, that's you know what I'm getting at on that one. You know, But failure is a lot of things. Look at a lot of sports athletes start with the love of the sport. They start at young ages. They get a love for their craft. They improve their skill set. And we talk a lot about sports figures because they are in front of us. It's one of the few professions where they are constantly being shown on TV, so we see what happens. But normally we see their successes more so than their failures. There is a poster that I have in my office of Michael Jordan, and in that poster there was I don't know the stats here. I'm just going to go off of the context of the poster. The poster says I've made 90,000 points in a game. I've missed, I don't know, I think it was 15,000 shots, and I was trusted to win the game 39 times and failed. Time and time and time, I failed, but yet I succeed. That's powerful. And if you're familiar with Michael Jordan, his you know what he went through, you know what he did, and to see it in that light, it really changes the perspective of failure. Um, Again, failure is experience, and the more experience we have, the more we will be able to grow and to be able to relay that message of what we've learned to not just our clients, not just our prospects, but to us, to each other. When I see us talking right now on Zoom, I envision generations before us that they would sit around at the campfire, and they would share stories. The elders would share stories, and the young ones, the younglings, would be listening. And at that time, before we had schools, before we had all that stuff, that is how generations learned from each other, by telling stories. So I really value the opportunity of hearing people come up on this stage and talk about experiences and on the stories. And the chances that I had to speak with the agents in Everest, it's the same thing. We all learn from each other. And that's one of the beauties that I think we experience as being part of the Everest culture, is that we are open. We are open. We're an open book. And as long as we have that intent to share and to be able to be taught, um, it, it, the opportunities are just going to be endless. So I end with that today, just to start the new year with a couple of tasks that I think we should add to our 2021 list. Let's conquer our fear. Let's fail, and let's gain the experience that we need to be successful and get to where we want to get to.